So welcome to another episode of Sales Intersection. I'm fortunate enough to have with me today my guest, Paul Garrido, and we have some history. We worked together 5 years ago where he came in fresh, wet behind the ears, and was an SDR, but showed a lot of balls and quickly accelerated his path of upper mobility. Now he's, senior global manager at NS1.
Yeah, global director. Yeah.
Global director. So I can no longer make the jokes about him that I used to. But he's had a very successful career, and I've had a lot of guests on this show where they've done a lot of keynotes. They're Forbes ranked #1. They do a podcast every day. And I find that there's a lot of people that deserve to tell their story. This is Paul's first podcast where I feel like they're working just as hard, if not harder, and they're not given a podium to speak their truth. So we'll get into the weeds a little bit more, but I want to introduce you guys to Paul Garrido. And I want to say thank you for being here and giving me your time.
No, thank you for having me. Excited to get this first podcast underway. Let's dig right into the thick of it.
Yeah. So usually I ask some kind of background question.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pretend we're looking at your LinkedIn.
Cool.
And instead of the LinkedIn rules of how you should go about the About Me and what you should have under your title so that you're noticed, and instead of global director, it's I'm serving people that blah blah blah. There's all these rules, right? LinkedIn algorithm changes. Now let's just pretend all those algorithms didn't exist.
Yeah.
First let's start with who is, the title under Paul Garrido, and forget about what you're supposed to do. What would you say Paul Garrido does?
What I do?
How do you help the sales world?
I would say career coaching for SDRs, BDRs is probably one of the things I'm particularly passionate about. Young talent, figuring out what they want to do, what they're passionate for, kind of uncovering a path forward for them.
And because not so long ago, you were there.
I was. I know the struggle. I know, the difficulty of, kind of figuring out what you truly want to try out, do, business needs versus, what you actually want to do and how you kind of slot in there. So just kind of helping people, extend a holding hand or whatever.
Well, so at which point did your bosses feel comfortable enough and confident enough in you to transition you from someone that was kind of going from that world to now managing people in that world?
At the time when that happened, when that transition happened, I'd say, I'd give it, that's a good question. I'd give it, they were optimistic, but you never really know until someone's in the seat, right? I remember my boss's, quote, word for word, reality is you'll either do well or you won't, right? But the opportunity's there, right? So it's kind of him just, hey, here's the opportunity. Are you going to make it happen or not? So yeah. I think at that point the business was young enough to take that risk, extended onto me based on the success I already had and the kind of
work ethic
and just in general the kind of personality I had displayed and built consensus across the team. So
you built your versatile brand internally.
Exactly. That kind of career capital of just the success I had there. Yeah.
So to be clear, today's agenda, as promised, we're going to be focusing on 3 main agenda points: prospecting, career development, and then work ethic, which are 3 areas that I associate with Paul. So let's start with prospecting. there's a lot of talk, especially among more of the bleeding edge sales communities, sales rebellion. You know, you got JV Barrows,
Yeah.
JV Sales.
Yeah.
There's a slew of them, right? Steve Richard, Casey Jones, more and more every day. And it seems like they're all kind of going for the Netflix on demand. You know, you pay $8.99 a month and you can get all their information. Anyway, it seems to me a large part of what they focus on right now is, and there is a large focus on the SDR world. They don't focus so much on enterprise, but video prospecting. What are your thoughts on going out of the box instead of email and cold calling, and maybe being a bit more cerebral and not doing 50 calls a day, but doing 25 customized videos for your prospects?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that's customized, and you know, I honestly not even customized. I'll take it a step back. Just honestly personalized. You know, you hear all these different rules about you templatized is like the 80-20 rule, right? Where like 80% is templatized, 10% is customized, and the other like final 10%. Now there's all these different tips and tricks and all that, but at the end of the day, I think any way which you can kind of stand out and just let the prospect know, like, hey, I'm truly reaching out to you authentically because I think this product or service will provide value to you in this way, shape, or form, right? I think whether that's video, email, phone, you know, even gift boxes or anything, right? I've seen some of those flying around, and people like anything that's really like genuine and authentic and like, hey, this is why you are important. Like, this is why I'm reaching out to you. And I think this will really provide value to the whatever business pain or problem you have. I think that is a great sales development motion, video or not, really. It's just getting that why you, why now, that entire kind of element. I always really press the BDRs on my team, like really think about the why behind just reaching out. Like, let's not senselessly reach out and just, because everybody can do that, right? You can get some outsourced BDR platform to, you know, spray out 100 and 1,000 emails a week, whatever. But really, like, the ones I always get excited for are, you know, hey, you know, guy, girl, whoever, reaching out to you because, you know, this is what we do. I thought this would be relevant for you for XYZ reason, and the way we can, you know, really help you out is XYZ, right? Just taking that level of personalization and that time to really think things through.
I mean, I think being an SDR is probably, in my experience, the hardest part of my whole career. You have no resume. So if I have Eric Jones has 3 goose eggs and really can't look back at my resume and say, well, you know, he's exceeded quota 13 out of 16 times. Let's give him a break. It's so it's KPI driven, it's activity driven. So let's take social selling, for example.
Yeah.
Social selling is not immediately connecting and asking for a meeting and just spraying and praying and saying this is, you know, it's 10 paragraphs. Do you have the patience to, I mean, I think the old dashboard is archaic and outdated. Are there new KPIs, like maybe not how many meetings you get that week, but maybe that month, and the KPIs are, who are you talking to? Are you talking to C-levels? Are you talking to coordinators? Are you, so I feel the pain of social selling and the way it should be, but there's also a lot of pressure on the SDRs to get their KPIs met, right? Week to week. So how do you kind of cross that bridge?
Yeah, and I think that the KPIs are always a tough one, right? It's one where activity, unfortunately, always kind of has to be there to prove that we're trying to get those meetings. But ultimately, what I always tell my team and everybody's, right, like the ultimate KPI that really matters, whether you're measuring on meetings or opportunities, It's really that fundamental, that final one, right? So whether you're getting it from 1,000 cold calls or 20 cold calls, to me it doesn't really matter. I think that you can own that strategy as a BDR, right? Ultimately, if you're getting to that final quota number, however you do it, right? Find your voice, whether that's email, being super tactical, or whether that's your volume play, or whether you're just a connect and sell phone call blitzing person, whatever it is. Do that, right? Whatever gets you to success best, right? You said it at the beginning, right? We're colorful people, so it's kind of hard to say like, hey, the math formula is you got to do 100 of these and 200 of these a week and another like 1,000 emails, right? Like that's really all hypothetical and theoretical, and really no one really has the formula. There's people out there that can really tell you. You can throw in, download some content, whatever data sheets or white papers to give you some indication of really how many you should be measuring for. But at the end of the day, really all that matters is, are we getting to that final number?
Yeah.
And if so, like, what's your strategy, right? Like, I have some BDRs that are fantastic at just like hammering out calls, right? They love calling, talking to people on the phones.
They're cold, or
they're cold.
They have some intent.
Yeah, there's some that are just super tactical about researching through Salesforce, LinkedIn, and it's like, hey, you're the right person. I'm gonna send you like a nice, quick, easy note, and like they both get success, right? So who am I to be telling like, hey, no, like do less of what's helping you be successful and do more of this, right?
Yeah.
That being said, though, right, if you're not getting to that final number, we should always be looking at what's working for the other team members and kind of calibrate from there, right? So it's always kind of a catch-22, because if the success isn't there, we gotta inspect activity or look at activity, but not all activity is created equal. Is really what it comes down to.
What's the tool set you think, generally speaking, is the perfect tool set for success in S1? I mean, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and when you're hiring now, I'm sure it affects the way you prioritize the requisites.
Yeah, I think tool sets, first and foremost, I love Sales Navigator. I think there is no better data provider, data set, content provider. You can bucket it in so many different tools, but it just gives you a wealth of information of that business, of that person, that again, you can really articulate a solid personalized email, right? Like there's people out there publishing content like books, blogs, just, hey,
Podcasts.
Yeah, podcasts, exactly. But that all just shows that you really took the time to research them, right? It's not just a spammy email, right? So I love Sales Navigator. I live and breathe by it. If you can get super tactical on like what are your search terms and everything like that, I think, or your list, and on whatever strategy, I think it's super powerful. Personally, I love Salesforce. I haven't really used any other CRM, so I'm a little biased, but I also think it has a wealth of information that, as long as data is clean and there's data integrity to it, you can make a lot of solid business decisions off it, right? Data-driven decisions. So I'd say those two. I do like a Zoom Info and a Connect and Sell, but I'd probably say my top two are Sales Nav, Salesforce, and then like the three others would be Zoom Info, Connect and Sell, and Outreach.io.
Okay. Yeah. So you feel like you have a pretty limited sales stack?
We have a pretty extensive one, actually. We have a lot of different tools.
And do you feel like they're all being taken advantage of?
That's what's kind of interesting now, right? You got a ton of tools that do like 80% of what others can do, and then some do like 50%. We definitely have a bit of tool sprawl, probably warranted, because we just want full contact data coverage, right? Whether it's US, Americas, Europe, Asia, right? Like there's different data providers that provide better data. around those technographic data, right? There's a ton of stuff out there. So,
And anything around ABM, account-based marketing?
Yeah, that falls more in marketing's wheelhouse. I do know they use, HubSpot. The Caliber Mind is one they brought on recently that really kind of shows you engagement scores and what accounts are engaged with us over others, and you can kind of prioritize them and see what they're engaging with. And yeah, I mean, all that stuff is super valuable, right? Seeing who's actively researching us, so then we can make some sort of outreach strategy towards them.
Yeah. A little plug here, sponsor for today, Ample Market.
Oh.
I would check it out. It's
Nice.
kind of a one-stop shop for ABM, for
Nice.
data collection, direct numbers, over 40
Nice.
million people.
Oh, cool.
Some great case studies. I mean, basically, you don't have to toggle between all those sales stacks. So I was it was mind blowing for me. I checked it out last week, and I'm still
Ample Market.
amplemarket.com. Yeah,
I'll check it out.
yeah, and they're experiencing some explosive growth. Some great case studies. Deal. Not sure if you heard of Deal.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a plug for the day, but it speaks to what we're talking about. So prospecting. One last question, and then we'll get into the next theme. Do you feel like, I mean, with ABM really speaks to the dark funnel, right? The fact that people on average go through the buying journey 64-70% of the time without engaging a salesperson.
Yeah.
So you would think that it would be more focus on the enterprise guys and intercepting them at a point where they already know enough information, where they know what to say, when to say it, who to say it to, where to say it, which would make me think that there'd be less emphasis on prospecting. Do you agree, or do you feel like that's not going away?
Prospecting, definitely not going away. Yeah, no chance. I think, like you think of all the different issues businesses have today, and I really think, outside of marginal things, whether it is culture, whatever you want to call it, right? Like I do think when you're looking at sales specifically, a lot of problems can be solved with prospecting. Whether it's pipeline coverage, pipeline generations, sales, revenue, right? It's all really a funnel at the end of the day. So the more you have coming into the funnel, prospecting, the better the results downstream, right? Better data on conversion metrics, who really are our target buyer, like are we missing something generally, and like really all that comes back to top funnel, which is prospecting motion.
So, and I'll add one more question. If you were going to take your SDRs out on a one-day sales training right now to address the biggest challenges they're facing, what would it be?
Biggest challenges they're facing right now, what would it be? Biggest challenge we're facing right now as a team, honestly, with COVID, it's just kind of been a little all over the place in terms of like what's been our method to madness. We had a really solid kind of approach to it before COVID hit, right? We had solid data coverage with ZoomInfo, calling office numbers, and we had to kind of switch to calling mobile. But in Europe, it kind of, we don't have people as happy us calling their mobile number. So it's all this flux. It really has introduced a certain level of like uncertainty into what our sales motion is, right? We're getting a ton of bounce backs and like out of office emails. So like, are people taking longer vacations now? And people not answering the phone calls. So I don't know, it just added a level of discovery. So to answer your original question on like what training would it be? Honestly, it's more like exploring what has how did COVID introduce, like, what's the new work style, right? Like,
how are we going to pivot?
What are we really approaching here? You see.
So there's probably a lot of A/B testing.
Exactly. Like, what are we really doing? Is it best to like go Sales Navigator, LinkedIn? Is it better to go email? Is it better to go phone and just like start hammering people on their mobile phones and just say pray for forgiveness? So I think more than anything is honestly like going to some sort of outreach.io or other sales like event and just kind of seeing like what's the aggregate data of like what's working out there. What are other businesses that maybe have a team 10 20x my size, and just all right, what's working for them? Are they getting a lot of success calling engineers? Are they getting a lot of success on emails, right? You've seen all the sorts of data that was flying around through COVID, like how calling dropped substantially and emails like went up 10x. So everybody was just spamming away at everybody. So really like what is working to a larger degree of like what we see today in NS1. So I think it'd be that.
Yeah. So moving on to career development and then your work ethic, which speaks more to the name of the podcast is Sales Intersection of the Money, the intersection of money and meaning.
Yeah.
And I think this touches more on the meaning part. The career development, I'm just going to take a stab in the dark. Does that have to do with kind of forging these, longer lasting relationships and being able to be with them long enough to understand how to work with each individual and have that good feeling at the end of the day to see them go from barely making it to thriving? Or what is the passion there for career development?
I just think being a product of that system, right? You kind of know the struggles, right? Like I went through probably 3-4 different sales or entry level roles before getting finally to take the next step, and it's tough work, man. It's really tough work, and when you find someone that is particularly disciplined, excited, engaged, just really excited and pushing it to the next level, whether that's in numbers, in execution, success, just overall strategy, you name it, right? Like I think it's again one of the toughest roles out there, and if you can just really see beyond, hey, this is just like an SDR, like a number, and like no, there's like really true potential in them to they seem really, really good at crafting messaging. They actually love working with customers beyond even like the first touch, right? What is it? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, what drives me kind of happiness there is just like, you didn't just linger or stay and like kind of stuck, really. Not in like a negative way or whatever. It's more just, it's a really grueling job, and when you see someone get promoted and get that pay bump or get that title or get that transition to another department where they like, it's just super rewarding, right? Like, damn, this person was putting in some crazy hours, knocking on doors. It's work that CEOs probably wouldn't be doing, right? Actually, in fact, they definitely wouldn't do in many cases when they're starting out. So it's
crazier hours than you.
BDRs. Yeah, I mean, certainly there's some that are really, really put in the time, right? So I think it all comes back like for anybody who really busts their ass for a really tough job, like giving them that opportunity to kind of just prove themselves in the next. It's just super rewarding.
I'm not sure if it's kind of a burgeoning industry where if I were to ask Paul Garrido at 10 years old, what do you want to be when you grow up? What would you have said?
Oh, at the time I was, for some reason, a firefighter. I don't know. Back when I was really young, I loved that whole concept, and I think it was because I had a firefighter come to school. I remember this in like really young elementary school. He came and they all looked just pretty badass. And
Torn up and scarred.
yeah, they were just honestly teaching us the basic of things, like when your house is in trouble or in a fire, what do you do? Who do you call? It's like teaching us 911. But I was like, oh, these guys are legit.
Yeah.
They're pretty massive and huge. I don't know. So I was like, they seem like cool bunch of groups.
Little factoid: in junior and in high school, we had to shadow a certain job of your pick, just to kind of get an idea of what you wanted to do. And I shadowed a fireman.
Oh, that's cool.
But bringing it back to my point, not many people would say sales at 10 years old.
Definitely not. I didn't even know it was a career.
Yeah.
To be honest.
And part of that is there's no sales classes in elementary school, junior high, high school. Of all universities, only 4% offer a sales-oriented class. 57% of college graduates end up in a sales job or entry level or experience.
What was the percentage again? Sorry.
57%.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So people are coming out of college and they're coming into the SDR world, and it could be ugly.
Yeah.
But there's an industry now. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, where they're even at the high school level, they're doing like these boot camps, 10-week, 12-week boot camps, where a lot of them are doing underrepresented folks that otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to enter the business world or sales world. And once they get out of the boot camp, they're seasoned.
Yeah.
Has that ever come up in discussion over at NS1 or an idea?
Of the boot camp or just?
Yeah, just how do we preclude putting investing so much money into a new hire and then 2 months later having to get rid of them, because it seems like it could be hit or miss if they just came out of college and it's their first job. And
yeah. I mean, the first thing is while we do have some just fresh out of college hires, we don't necessarily hire fresh out of college. We typically get about 2-ish years of experience. Doesn't necessarily fully have to be in sales, but probably some related career. But no, I agree. I think that it's extremely valuable, right? It's like, I always think it's funny because what is sales is probably one of the most important business aspects you could ever learn, right? It's fundamental. You don't have a business without sales, let's just put it that way. So I think all these boot camps that are coming up, and even my school where I studied, Bentley, like they pulled or they created a sales program as well, right? Just from the need of all the surrounding businesses that needed sales talent, right? It wasn't, hey, great, you have a ton of accountants and financial analysts and whatever else coming out, but also we need sales talent, right? And like, I think there's just this kind of bad cloud. At least there was a couple of years back, and probably way back, like, oh, sales, you don't want to do that. Like the cold calling, like it's a boiler room, phone in your face. You're in the, and while there are places that are like that, right? There are truly amazing places to have a sales career, right? That have a really solid career ladder planned out, treat their BDRs really well, can really expose them to a number of different areas of the business.
And how would you go about identifying the best companies where it's not a toxic environment? I mean, Glassdoor,
Yeah, I think Glassdoor, I think a lot of, I'd say probably Glassdoor. There's a ton of different kind of groups out there now, whether that's like modern sales. Yeah, sales pros. Just kind of networking, right? Like Glassdoor is always a great one. LinkedIn's always a fantastic one to just kind of check around and see like how long are people staying at the business at the SDR work, right? Do you see people getting promoted from SDR to SDR2 or whatever, or to other areas of the business, right? Like you can do a quick look up and see all that. Glassdoor is always a great one. They're kind of the the top ones in the space, but
Yeah, I got you.
yeah.
So last question on this topic. 5 years from now, do you see yourself focused mostly on prospecting and career development, or do you see a change coming?
In some way, shape, or form, yes. I think that's always going to stay near and dear to me. Whether that is like a full cycle, revenue manager, whether that's sales development manager, whether that's another role entirely. I really truly believe like you can be an enterprise AE. You should still be prospecting. And your prospecting method could be like networking. It could be, cold calling, whatever it is. But yeah, like that's 5 years down the line, no doubt about it. Like that will still be near and dear to my heart. And I think career coaching, right? Like you should always be helping those in your team, and otherwise, help them out, right? It's just like you've learned a lot in your sales career, right? There's a lot you've learned just your own career development, right? Like what are those nuggets, right? Like I'm super thankful of my the people in my path that have helped me out throughout my years. Like I certainly wouldn't be where I am without their support, right? And I don't know, I think it's just you got to give a little bit of that back to society, right? Like leave it a little bit better. And I'm a product of that support structure. So.
Sure. Now moving into kind of the work ethic, I remember, like I said, I was working with Paul at Distill Networks, which is now part of Imperva, and he would, I was getting to the point where I was a little bit jaded, and this kid comes in, first thing in the morning, left last at night, so I just kind of rode his coattails basically, and leveraged his motivation and energy, and it was great. I think we both had, we both added value to each other's career, but I was really impressed with his work ethic, and so I asked, some questions. And do you want to get into that? I know that you have some family history that maybe there's some wiring there, or do you disregard that component completely, and you attribute your work ethic to something else? I mean, because it is in the 1%.
No, I definitely attribute it to that mainly. I'd say that and just like stupid competitive, but in some ways, even competitive with my family in and of itself. It really all comes back to early young years, right? You kind of see. Grandfather made it from practically being a nobody, shining shoes really when he was young to help out, growing to be one of the first and youngest, well, not first, the youngest chief of the Dominican Air Force, and really building a really beautiful career, right? From there being a Supreme Court justice, from there going to support like the collegiate electoral college, and then similarly kind of from there my dad also kind of came from really solid work ethic, where he started something like a marketing associate level more or less at a local consumer goods company, and grew to at the peak of his career be one of the leading people at a multinational globally, right? So kind of just seeing his work ethic play out, and one of the things he would always say to me is, the harder I work, the luckier I get. It's a pretty popular quote, right? You find it everywhere, but at the time I didn't think it was. I was just like thought it was him that actually made it up. Kind of young kid, not really knowing much about the world at the time, but that just kind of stuck with me, right? And it really became real once I made it to the U.S., right? Like I'm not gonna lie, I probably had a fairly sheltered upbringing, but once you come to the U.S. and you kind of see how competitive school is, people are putting in some hours, and you're like, oh wow, all right, like this is another level of
you got to pick up your game.
You got to pick up your game, right? It's not mom, dad, grandpa, whoever like helping you out. Like it's the real deal. Like this is no joke. And one of the things that certainly put some good work in college, but I admittedly also did my fair share of partying and having a good time. And what the final kind of wake up slap in the face motion was when I was graduating. I literally didn't have a job, right? I think Bentley, they really boast a nice career. What is it? Something like 90% of graduates have a career or have a job before the graduation or something like that. I was not a part of that number, right? I graduated. I didn't get my first sales job, which I kind of tripped into what, like 3-4 months after I graduated, and it probably took 120 applications more. I mean, I was pretty much in a suit and tie every other day at one point, the last couple months of school. And it was, super, super demoralizing not getting any sort of offer letter and just seeing everybody around you get one. You're like,
yeah,
damn, I really got to step up my game and, kind of just be resilient. And that's kind of what brought me out here. And from there, honestly, I was just kind of like, hey, I got a great opportunity. Not a lot of international folks get the opportunity to come to the U.S. Long term on a green card, citizenship, whatever it is. Quite frankly, don't fuck it up, right? Like,
yeah,
my parents, my grandparents didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
It was really, I probably in an unhealthy way saw it at the time, like, I can't let them down and I can't let myself down. So that just brought me like a whole nother level of competition of just, hey, they did that well with the opportunities they had at the time. I have arguably a better opportunity.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
So now I want to get into kind of the concluding questions that may or may not have anything to do with what we just talked about.
Yeah.
One, it does a little bit, but you have a reputation probably of being, the stable worker, dependable, reliable, right? Do you still have that motivation you did 5 years ago, or are there days when you're like, I don't want to be Paul Garrido today?
I definitely think like motivation comes in waves, right? It's not like a line, and I think the work environment, the cultural environment, and the world as a whole, kind of affects that in some way, shape, or form. But it's really up to that kind of self-motivation to kind of like snap out of it, right? Like, we all have bad days, right? You lose a big deal, you didn't get the opportunity, you didn't get your number, right? Like, sure, all right, like that sucks. Go on a nice long run, long bike ride, hit the gym hard, get all that stress, that anger, whatever it is, and then just how do you use that to get better, right? So no, there's certainly days, and I just try to like really anchor myself in trying to stay active and going out and working out.
And which brings me to my next question. What are, maybe 3 or so things that you do outside of work that one up your game professionally?
Two things that I'm a big fan of. First off, cycling. I love going out, riding a bike, and going on long road endurance cycling rides. But even walking, honestly, I like always try to just, if it's walking home after work, walking to work, before work, going on one-on-ones with my team during a walk, right? Going to Salesforce Park, whatever it is. I really think there's a level of authenticity that walking, and I guess that is part of work, but walking is really solid. If you want to pop in a podcast, whatever it is, that's really cool. And then third thing, you kind of got me there. I'll get back to you on that one.
Any meditation or?
I'd say like walking is really kind of that meditation for me. I'm unfortunately one of those individuals that just can't sit still for too long. I just need to be kind of moving. So my meditation, a lot of times, like I walked here, just walking, thinking. The cycling is probably the big one that I really enjoy, and
Yeah, just so you know, he rides sometimes 100 miles a day on the weekend. He's been inviting me, fortunately he's been inviting me on some rides, pathetically coming behind by about 30 minutes, but I'm catching them.
Yeah. Actually, the third one, to answer your question, I do think food and alcohol and all that stuff actually does play a big part in it too. So
balancing it out and diet. So.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of when you can, just really trying to eat healthy. I have found that like what you eat, right, like kind of does affect your body's energy levels, and those can always kind of factor into work. And so just trying to be mindful eating more than anything.
What's like the new thing for you right now, eating wise? Like it's the new kale, the new coconut juice, the new pomegranate, the new acai berry.
You know, for me, I wouldn't even say it's any of that. I think
it's a mixture.
My big thing lately is just like tubs of Greek yogurt, just raw protein, love it.
Yeah, in the morning and
yeah, morning, evening. I mean, it makes me probably sound like some sort of hardo, but I just clean, lean. Tastes pretty good if you get the right brand. So yeah, I see that. I have been dabbling with the good tea here and there, right? I'm just such a coffee guy that it's hard to break that.
I have insomnia, Death Wish insomnia. It's the world's strongest coffee.
Yeah,
it's illegal in a lot of countries. Nice. So if you ever need to really,
maybe we'll do one after the show.
Yeah. And then final question: who would you say your mentors are? Top mentors.
Mentors. 3 mentors off the top of my head. Tom Batchelder, he's been my coach for since I got in NS1. Andrew Valencia, another close guy at NS1, great friend, great peer, has helped guide the path many times along the way. And honestly, my boss has also been a solid guy, just helping me out. So Kevin Romani, that guy, yeah. Solid team I got, and honestly that all came from this opportunity at this company I'm at. So great people. So hats off to them.
Do you think they know that they're your mentor?
I think they do. I certainly mentioned it to them a number of times. So yeah, I'm sure they know.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, that's all, guys. I know no one's gonna probably watch this whole podcast, so. A new thing I'm doing is based on the 3 themes of prospecting, career development, and work ethic. I'm going to have a little snippet, the highlight attached to each theme when I post this and edit it. And so, it's a little bit more realistic that you'll listen to it and more relevant to the central themes. So, Paul, any kind of plugs you want to make right now, or
no, nothing super huge. That's thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward to seeing this podcast. I think you're building something truly unique, right? Like we should make a plug about this. Great.
Sales intersection,
there you go. No, I think it's a great kind of motto, right? It's really kind of the blending of 2 worlds that no one else has really kind of looked at or uncovered, right? You have a lot of different podcasts on how to improve sales, but really what's the meaning behind the madness that there's so many of us out there that are really looking for that. So good content. Thank you,
man. My only plug is check out salesintersection.com. You'll see all my episodes. Paul's will be up in the next week.
Oh yeah.
Pretty soon I'll have my other services for sales consulting and whatnot, but that's all I gotta say. You can Google me or whatnot, but I've been waiting to say that for years.
Get you some SEO optimization.
Yeah. Eric Jones is tough, dude. You got to be like Eric B. Jones, Eric Breakbill Jones. Yeah. So anyway, fabulous to have you here, Paul. And of course, I'll let you know when this is going to be popping up.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll be promoting it on all the social facets, both me and Paul. So have a good night, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Sales Intersection. And stay tuned. We got some big news coming up and some big guests. So thanks again, and see you next time.